What if Israel is secretly building a $27 billion stealth bomber of its own? A country already flying America's most advanced jets, backed by billions in U.S. military aid, now rumored to be developing a weapon so powerful it could outmatch even the U.S. B-21 Raider. With world-class cyber technology and missile defense, Israel's innovations often rival the Pentagon's, and if this project is real, it could change the balance of air power forever. Whispers suggest Russia, China, and Iran are already alarmed. But is this bold leap fact, or just speculation? Could it be Israel's path to total aerial dominance? Let's uncover the truth behind the mysterious Israeli stealth bomber. In June, the world watched in shock as Israel and Iran clashed in what became known as the 12-Day War. Explosions thundered across the Middle East, but the real turning point came when the United States entered the fight. For the first time in history, America fought alongside Israel in a full-scale war, sending in its deadliest aircraft, the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber. Flying undetected over Iran, it unleashed 30,000-pound bunkerbuster bombs, massive weapons capable of tearing through rock and steel to obliterate hidden nuclear sites. Israel alone couldn't have carried out such a strike. Its advanced F-35s are lethal fighters, but too small for bombs of that size. Israel has no heavy bombers, no aircraft that can fly long range, stay invisible, and deliver earth-shattering payloads. That's why Washington had to step in. But now, some lawmakers are asking, should Israel have this power on its own next time? Two U.S. representatives, Democrat Josh Gottheimer and Republican Mike Lawler, think so. They've introduced the Bunkerbuster Act, a bill that could allow President Trump to transfer America's most devastating bombs, the massive ordnance penetrator, and even the aircraft required to launch them. Why does this matter? Because these bombs aren't compatible with just any jet. Only one plane on Earth can carry them. The U.S. Air Force's B-2 Spirit. No F-35, no Israeli fighter, not even America's B-1s or aging B-52s are certified for the job. That's what makes this proposal so bold and so controversial. Without a specialized stealth bomber, these bombs are useless weight. Supporters argue arming Israel would strengthen both nations. With Iran's nuclear program threatening global security, empowering Israel could keep U.S. forces out of future wars. But critics warn it could trigger a dangerous arms race in the Middle East. Would Israel use such power responsibly, or launch strikes without warning? The Bunkerbuster Act is not the first push for giving Israel long-range strike capabilities. Former Israeli Ambassador Michael Oren revealed that as early as 2013, he personally asked Washington 3 times for B-52 bombers. Old but powerful, the B-52 could carry nuclear-sized payloads, including bunker busters, and deliver a clear warning to Iran. The answer was always no. America has never sold a strategic bomber to any ally. Still, the debate continues. Some argue giving Israel stealth bombers is essential to prevent Iran from ever reaching nuclear capability. Others caution that bombers like the B-52 are slow, vulnerable, and outdated against modern air defenses. Yet during the 12-Day War, Israeli strikes had already weakened Iran's air defenses before U.S. B-2s entered the skies, proving that with the right tools, Israel could pave its own path to dominance. So the question remains, will Israel one day command its own stealth bomber fleet? If so, the next war in the Middle East might look very different, and the balance of global power could shift forever. Imagine a tiny country daring to pull off a precision strike deep inside a rival's territory, and doing it with surgical confidence. Some analysts believe Israel could have carried out an operation like Midnight Hammer on its own, without direct U.S. intervention. By that point, Iran's air defenses were badly degraded, and if choices were limited, even B-52s might have been pressed into service. Throughout the conflict, Israeli F-15s and F-16s flew deep over Iran and returned without a single combat loss, a stark demonstration of Israel's precision and mastery of modern air power. But this is as much political as it is technical. Supplying Israel with B-2s or massive penetrator bombs could be sold in Washington as a way to let Israel act independently, and thereby reduce the pressure for U.S. boots on the ground. Former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. Michael Oren argued this in the days before Midnight Hammer. If Washington had agreed to earlier requests for B-52s, Israel wouldn't be anxiously waiting to see whether America would step in. Giving Israel the means to act alone, he said, would quiet critics across the American political spectrum worried about being dragged into a prolonged Middle East war. Midnight Hammer was also historic. It marked the first time the United States entered a war in direct military support of Israel. Previously, U.S. aid tended to be indirect, equipment, intelligence, resupply, rather than direct combat support. Think back to Operation Nickel Grass in October 1973, when President Nixon ordered a massive airlift of weapons and fighters to resupply Israel mid-war. Or the Gulf War in 1991, when, after persuading Israel not to retaliate against Iraqi Scud strikes, the U.S. rewarded Israel with surplus F-15s, F-16s, Apaches, and Blackhawks. If a Bunkerbuster Act passes and Washington supplies B-2s and massive ordnance to Israel, we could be returning to that older model, equipping Israel to act independently. In that case, the recent U.S. combat role might remain an extraordinary, one-off event, not the start of a new pattern. Thanks to generous aid packages, Israel can buy almost any American-made weapon it wants and usually on favorable terms. But access isn't the same as affordability or sound strategy. Weapons are tools, not answers. Military planning requires hard choices, balancing long-term threats, budgets, and what truly fits national needs. That creates a gap between what Israel could purchase and what it should purchase. A concrete example, the U.S. Littoral Combat Ship, LCS. For years, Israel considered a heavily adapted version to expand beyond its Corvette-based fleet. Corvettes handle coastal defense well, but new tasks, enforcing a Gaza naval blockade, protecting offshore natural gas fields, demand more endurance, survivability, and multi-mission capability. Israel imagined an LCS redesigned to be less modular and more self-sufficient, fast, high-tech, with strong sensors and weapons. On paper it fit, but customization drove costs sky-high. The price became impossible to justify, and the project was shelved. That doesn't mean the idea is dead. Shifts in shipbuilding costs, changes in strategic threat, or financing could bring it back. If the maritime threat grows or new funding appears, Israel may revisit a bigger, more capable warship. When it comes to fighter jets, Israel gets some of the best American aircraft, but not everything. The F-22 Raptor, the world's premier air superiority fighter, is blocked from export by the Obey Amendment. That law was created with Israel in mind. Worried U.S. officials feared advanced tech might be passed on, intentionally or by accident. So instead of singling out Israel, the U.S. barred all exports, meaning only the U.S. Air Force flies the F-22. Still, Israel has a knack for turning air superiority jets into potent strike platforms. The F-15, built for air-to-air dominance, was adapted by Israel into a devastating bomber platform. It's plausible Israel could have modified other designs similarly, had the chance arisen. Long-range strikes remain a major challenge. Israel's F-15s and F-16s can reach distant targets with aerial refueling, but the missions are difficult and dangerous when defenses are strong. That's why some defense thinkers point to the need for a long-range strike bomber. The most talked about candidate from the U.S. is the B-21 Raider, stealthy, long-range, and designed to carry heavy ordnance. On paper, a platform like the B-21 would give Israel the reach to hit hardened or deeply buried targets inside Iran. But there are big hurdles. Israel hasn't operated a strategic bomber since retiring B-17s in the 1950s. Export controls around a sensitive platform like the B-21, especially given its potential nuclear role, would make any transfer highly unlikely. In some hypothetical scenarios, disabling multiple Iranian air defense sites could have opened a corridor for American B-2 Spirit bombers to slip through and strike nuclear facilities undetected. But even then, using non-stealthy B-52s for such missions would be far riskier. Had Israel owned 2 stealth bombers of its own, analysts argue the calculus and the options would have looked very different. Bottom line, weapons, budgets, diplomacy, and politics all interact. Israel has technical skill and tactical daring, but not every tool is available or affordable. Even with Washington's help, strategic choices matter, And sometimes the smartest move is not the one with the flashiest hardware, but the one that fits a nation's long-term needs and limits. Imagine a single weapon powerful enough to punch through mountains of concrete and steel, capable of striking at the very heart of underground fortresses. For years, Israel has looked toward America's most guarded arsenal, hoping to gain access to these game-changing tools of war. There's often talk, sometimes closer to rumor than reality, about Israel acquiring American B-52 bombers. These giants of the sky are still considered vital to U.S. strategy, and handing even one over would mark a dramatic shift in American policy. But Israel's constant concern about Iran keeps the whispers alive. If threats escalate, pressure may rise for the U.S. to put new options on the table. Until then, Israel relies on its advanced fighter jets, waiting for the day it might secure the heavy punch of America's long-range bombers. Of course, warplanes are only as deadly as the weapons they carry. That's where the massive ordnance penetrator, the MOP, enters the conversation. It's one of the largest bombs ever built, designed to smash through hardened underground bunkers. Israel's interest in it is obvious. Deep beneath Iranian soil lie facilities, shielded by layers of rock and concrete. But the U.S. has never approved transferring the MOP to Israel, partly because the Israeli Air Force doesn't yet have an aircraft capable of carrying such a massive weapon. Without a delivery system, the bomb is just a dream. Politics add another layer. During President Barack Obama's administration, Washington worried that giving Israel the MOP might encourage a surprise strike on Iran, one that could ignite a regional war and shift the balance of power in the Middle East. Still, the future remains uncertain. A changing political climate or new threats could bring the MOP back into the spotlight, especially if Israel acquires a plane powerful enough to deliver it.